That's the coolest introduction I've ever had in my career. That's awesome. Good morning, everyone. It is great to see all of you. Welcome, one and all, to tomorrow's Titans. I am Yegi Durkin. I'm an anchor at the New York Stock Exchange. On Wall Street, we price risk. In this room, you prevent it from trending on Twitter. So thank you, all you cybersecurity. I got a bunch of cybersecurity jokes for the open for this crowd. I spend my days covering the companies who are changing the world, and today on this stage, we're going to meet a handful of companies who are set to change it next, the ones trying to secure it before it gets hacked. Because let's be honest, in this room in particular, moving fast and breaking things is not a strategy. It's probably an incident report. I'll take a couple little laughs there. Oh man, I got a lot of these to get through. This is what RSA and NightDr are all about, supporting the next great generation of founders and building the digital locks and hopefully writing fewer "we regret to inform you" emails. To everyone watching back home in New York on the New York Stock Exchange Network, thank you for tuning in today. No phishing links, just a great show. This is tomorrow's, phishing links, like that one. This is tomorrow's Titans Pitch, Defend, Win, presented by NightDr, as well as the New York Stock Exchange, with PwC as our lead sponsor. Let's give it up for our lead sponsor here, huh? Thank you, because if you don't clap for our sponsor, I don't think we get paid. Before our first company takes the stage, let's meet the people they will have to impress. The only group in this building scarier than a zero-day exploits. Zero-day exploit crowd. We like that one. All right, let's meet our judges. I like that. That was cool. All right, our first judge is someone who has protected some of the most sensitive data on the planet. I do mean that quite literally. He served as CISO of the White House Military Office. Today, he protects the data that flows through the Intercontinental Exchange, as well as the New York Stock Exchange. As someone who works there, that makes me very grateful. Please welcome to the stage your first judge, Steve Pugh. What's up, brother? Nice to have you. Steve, I'm sorry about that link I clicked on that one time at work. The prince said he needed money. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Our second judge is one of the most recognized names in the world of cybersecurity, known across the industry for being sharp, direct, and refreshingly uncensored. She has held the CISO seat at some of the largest names in tech: Rubrik, Twitter, Bill.com, and now she is leading security at one of the hottest companies in the space, Upwind. Please welcome your second guest, Rinki Sethi. Refreshingly uncensored. That's a great line. New Twitter bio. And our third judge, if you've ever watched a little show called Shark Tank? Shark Tank? I think that's how it's pronounced. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, you know this face. Emmy Award-winning entrepreneur, cybersecurity powerhouse, the founder of Cybersecurity. No one in this room has done more to find, to elevate, and put a spotlight on the next generation of innovators. Today, he brings that same eye to this stage. If there's ever a time to be on your A game, it is right now. Please welcome the one and only Robert Herjavec. My man, thank you for being here.
My wife says I'm the George Clooney
of cybersecurity. Yeah. You and Dave DeWalt can duke it out later. Anyway. It's great to have all of you. I'm going to do an opening question for you all. Robert, I'll kick things off with you. You've built, you've bought, you've invested in this space for decades. What makes a company worth betting on?
I think what you're seeing right now with so much hype and so much money being invested is disruption. I think that is the key word I'm taking away from this year's RSA is what technologies are disrupting entire industries. We're going to see massive disruption over the next 2 to 3 years, and that's exciting. Because that creates opportunity, it also creates a lot of chaos for legacy. Cyber is the only industry where big doesn't really matter. You can die big and you can die small.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. Rinky, over to you. What are you hoping to hear or looking forward to hear most from some of the companies here today?
Looking forward to really hearing, sorry, my voice is shot, but looking forward to really hearing about how they're leveraging AI or solving AI and agentic security use cases.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here. And Steve Pugh, what makes a company's pitch stand out from the rest?
I think the big thing for me is taking what the company does and actually tying it to business risk, and then being able to prove that, not just a polished pitch, not just marketing slides, but actually delivering results.
All right, that's awesome. Give it up for your judges here, Robert, Rinky, and Steve. And please welcome to the stage your first competitor, Chief Digital Officer of DataBee, a Comcast company. Please welcome Aaron Ham. Great to see you, Aaron.
Good to see you, JD.
Thank you for coming. I just want to be clear. So it's DataBee, a Comcast company.
Correct.
It's like, like a Spike Lee joint, a Comcast company. It's great to have you here. For anyone in this room who has not yet encountered DataBee, set the scene. Tell us all about it. Tell us why DataBee is the buzz.
Yeah, so bees are some of the most efficient data collectors in nature. They go across hundreds of sources, collect what matters, and then bring back that to one central unified place, their hive. That's exactly what DataBee is set out to do. We are working with customers to pull the information from all of their disconnected tools into one trusted, uniformed platform. One of the things that we're finding is that the market is demanding that regulators and auditors no longer are looking at a point in time for compliance, but rather continuous. And so DataBee provides that via a grounded, trusted platform that we like to call the hive, or my little analogy of it. And we've actually seen this with some of our customers already. We actually had a highly regulated infrastructure customer that had this exact problem of very siloed tools, disjointed. They weren't able to look at everything together in one picture. And so what we were able to do is bring all that information together. And within months, they were able to find millions of annual and credit card chargeback fraud that was going on within their organization. Along with that, there were several unknown risks that were identified, and those were brought into and referred to for criminal investigation because they were so serious. And so that's really the proof of DataBee today. What we're seeing where we're seeing this most importantly is with the different personas within each one of the organizations. So imagine this, you have a CISO who's going to a board meeting and they're looking at the board praying that they don't get asked, what's my control health? Because they don't have one unified way to view that. Or I am a compliance leader and I have 6 different spreadsheets that I'm manually manipulating 6 different ways to then present to the regulators. Or I'm a SOC analyst and that SOC analyst is drowning in noise and not able to identify the signals that actually matters. That's really what DataBee set out to solve. So you have your GRC tools, which give you your control health, your SIMs, which tell you what your threat analytics are, where your incidents are, your threats, and then you have data pipelines that move the data. But you don't have one foundation that all of these teams can go to and trust. And so that's what DataBee set out to do, is provide that trusted platform. What I like to also say, being the chief data officer, is if you don't have good data and trust in that data, any AI that you run on top of that doesn't matter. You're going to be leading the business off of bad decisions. DataBee in and of itself was built by practitioners. So we have experts from NetWitness, Blue Vector, Comcast, and Nationwide. We are people that have lived this problem day in and day out. We're not just reading about it in the news. And so that's really what DataBee is here to do, and to showcase to everyone. We're here to provide you that full picture, not just looking at one honeycomb at a time, but the entire hive. And we're really buzzing to see what other customers have in their in their environment.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Judges, with the remaining time, it's all you. Robert, I'll kick things off over here.
You've done an amazing job of the bee analogy. I'm surprised you didn't come out dressed as a bee, too. First of all, I fully agree with you in terms of the data problem with AI, and I think that's the really long tail from an investment perspective. That's why Databricks and Snowflake have these massive valuations, because I think it's going to continue. I have a slightly different question. In an industry that rewards innovation, and there's this garage startup mentality that's very romantic, is being part of Comcast a advantage or a disadvantage when you go and pitch the customers?
I think it's an advantage. So the way DataB was created, it was built by practitioners at Comcast underneath Newport Davis. We had the same struggles that everyone that's in the Fortune 500 has. We were doing manual point-in-time audits, and we weren't able to actually move the meter of the business forward. And so by building the security data fabric, Newport Davis was able to go out to her peers, and they were struggling with the same thing. And so when we go out and talk to customers, we find that they're struggling with those same things today as they were 3 years ago. Interesting enough as well, we actually have, DataB's been around for 3 years. We've had some customers and prospects that in the past are like, we're going to build it ourselves, we've got this. They're now circling back because they realize how complex and hard it is to do it yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of competitors in the data fabric, data security space. Like, what's the key differentiator and why are people choosing DataB?
I think it's because we're built by practitioners. So we have sat in the seats of the people that we're talking with. We understand their challenges. And one of the most important things is a lot of items or other platforms in the data fabric space, they're focusing on transforming that data, moving that data, routing, augmentation, but they're not focusing on the quality of the data up front. So if you have bad quality from these systems that you're putting in, are those other security tools letting those customers know, or are they just letting it run through the pipeline? With DataB, we actually expose that and help you clean up your ServiceNow, CMDB, or your other application portfolios.
So I like the idea of the bee costume. I think that would have been clever. I was trying to think of the analogy, though. And so many companies have data lakes today, lots of data consolidated. You guys have your hive, talked about trust. Just picturing like a bear coming after the hive to get the honey. Like, how do you keep the data lake or the hive from becoming a liability when you've aggregated everything together?
That's a great question. So one unique thing about us, also going back to the security data fabric approach, is we actually don't store the customer's data. So we're just a transformation engine. We bring that big data through, connecting via different APIs, S3. We have several different ways that we can ingest the data. We transform that all to OCSF, and then we land that back in the customer's data lake for that exact reasons. Comcast does not want to be in the business of storing all of these other corporations' information.
And I guess just real quick, a follow on. When you're doing that transformation, are you getting some cost savings as you trim down the data?
Yes, yep. So you can route information out if you're looking to do that, but we also store the raw data. So one of the nice things about the AI part of our platform that we have is not only are we transforming that to OCSF, but we are storing that raw message of what was actually transformed. So when that auditor or the AI comes along and you're like, hey, where did I get this number from? You can see that full lineage and history.
Aaron, how do you charge for it? Do you charge on a consumption? Do you charge on a seat?
We're priced on a throughput basis. So based off of the data that comes through, we'll price that back to your data lake.
You mentioned all being practitioners. Like, what's the background really quick of the founders?
So Nicole Bucala is our GM. She comes from Zscaler. Our VP of product, I think, also comes from Zscaler. We have folks from ServiceNow, Nationwide, Blue Vector. So really across the board, from consulting and GRC to engineering or threat actors.
Any other questions for our judge? We've still got a few more minutes left to go here.
I'll throw one out there.
Yeah.
Where's DataB going? Like, what's next?
Yeah, so with the changing in regulations where we're no longer looking at a point in time, everything needs to be continuous. Where I really see us moving forward is focusing on that data piece, and then augmenting that to where right now we're aligning to various frameworks such as PCI 4.0, the CIS frameworks, the Gartner ODM. So we're aligning to each one of those frameworks so that if a customer logs into our platform, they can say, I have this control that's looking at application security, and I know that this one control actually provides coverage across these 4 or 5 different frameworks.
What's the typical entry point? Are you selling to the CISO? Are you selling to the fraud group? What, like who has the greatest amount of pain that's going to buy the product?
Yeah, so the areas that we typically see coming to us with that big pain point is the folks that are responsible for compliance and cybersecurity. So that could be your CISO, if I have a CISO that's responsible for the board meeting and the metrics that are coming up and what's my control health, how many times have I gotten hacked? What is the time that it takes to revoke an employee's access after they've been terminated? Is that within the guidelines that we want or the risk tolerance that we have within the organization? We also have the compliance leaders that come to us that are responsible for the broader business health. And then we have the SOC analysts. So because we're bringing all that data into one platform, we're really getting several different entry points into a company.
Given that you guys started about 3 years ago, like how are you guys leveraging AI internally to stay competitive?
Yeah, so we're leveraging right now AI for a lot of our documentation. And then because we have the data that lives in OCSF, and we have our own extension of OCSF, we're training that off of that. We also have deployments of the product internally at Comcast. So we're kind of eating our own dog food, if you might say. And so we're really leveraging AI across all of those to figure out how can we expand this control? How can we align to different frameworks and coverages? What's the documentation that should be available for this type of metric or compliance assertion?
And you mentioned frameworks. Are customers able to bring their own frameworks in, or are you guys going to have pre-populated? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have pre-populated frameworks, but customers can also bring their own. That feature, I think, is rolling out in the next month.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more bee analogies.
That you've been cooking them up, I could tell, right?
Okay.
Working hard over
The
here.
bear was really good.
I was trying.
I was trying.
I feel like these are a bunch of dad jokes.
We got about a minute left. I had a question for you. What is one lesson in cybersecurity you wish more people better understood?
So being the chief data officer, I think a lot of people want to use AI, and that's the hot new buzzword, and it's been around for a while, but no matter what you're doing with AI, if you don't have that data foundation that's really trusted and people can look to that platform and say, yes, I agree with that number, no, I don't agree with that number, and this is why, and clean up that mess, then you're going to be leading the business in a bad direction. And so as you scale the AI within your industry and within your enterprise, I would challenge you to take a look at your data. How many folks on your team are actually using manual spreadsheets, or there's a data lake and they might go to it, but then they download it to Excel and do some additional work to it. If you don't have that corrected, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
All right, amazing. 30 seconds. Judges, anything else for Aaron?
Oh, thanks.
All right, give it up for our first competitor, Aaron Ham, taking the stage. That is so hard to go first. You don't know what you're getting into. Now everyone else backstage is like, oh, now I see how Aaron did. A little bit easier here. All right, please welcome to the stage our next future Titan, the founder and CEO of Horizon 3, Snehal Antani. Hey, Snehal, nice to see you.
Likewise.
Thanks for being here. All right, you built a machine that breaks into companies for a living, and they actually pay you for it. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, the best kind of criminals are the ones that don't get caught. And so you learn a lot as you go through it. No, we pioneered this idea of AI hackers. Because when I was a CIO, I had no idea I was secure until the bad guys showed up. Are we fixing the right vulnerabilities? Are we logging the right data in Splunk? Does my team even know how to respond to a breach? And the answer is, I don't know. I either wait to get hacked and find out the hard way. I pay a mediocre consultant to show up once a year and test a small sample of my environment. But for every patch Tuesday, I wanted a pen test Wednesday. Every time my environment changed, I wanted to understand if I was exploitable. Because having a bunch of vulnerabilities was just noise. Am I exploitable? What is the consequence of exploitation? Are threat actors known to actually use that tactic? That's what I needed to prioritize resources and change what we're doing. Because the hardest part of my job as a CIO was deciding what not to fix. And the best way to answer that question is to understand the attacker's perspective. And that's what we built.
All right, grateful for you being here. Judges, over to you. Rinky, I'll kick things off with you for our second contestant.
There's a lot of competitors building in the agentic pen testing. There's, I just sat with Kevin and Alex and hearing about the offensive security space. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts on that are mimicry is the best form of flattery. Like we won, we've got 5,000 companies, we're scaling like crazy. Everything works in PowerPoint, and our results will do the talking as we kick Kevin's ass.
Direct, I like it. So thinking about AI, both offensively and defensively, obviously you guys are applying offensive techniques to the defensive problem. I'm curious of your thoughts about a potential arms race in that space, and what does that look like? If it
Yeah, so it's actually something really interesting. The limiting factor in offensive cyber, honestly, like why are there so many web app AI pen testing companies right now? Because the cost of training data is zero. You can go train an agent on all the open source applications that are out there in the world and build a good enough thing. I mean, we saw that with Expo. They only earned like $700 in actual bug bounties because they found an inconsequential problem everywhere. And so when the cost of training data is very low, you can get a decent amount of effort. But I don't recall JP Morgan publishing their internal network configurations on the open internet for people to train on, or Morgan Stanley's or CVS's or anyone else. So the most valuable training data in offensive cyber is deeply buried behind the firewalls of these really big companies. And so the arms race, yeah, there's an agent's arm race, there's an agent's development arms race, but the limiting factor in any sort of offensive platform is training data, especially infrastructure and network training data. And so I think what we're going to see is the role of AI in accelerating vulnerability research, because once again, if you can get the source code, you can train off of all the source code that's available and do quite a bit of damage. I think the time from patch Tuesday to exploitation of all the security flaws has shrunk dramatically because that's a really narrow problem to go reason and train off of. But I think to build an AI cyber weapon that you can point, click, shoot, and take over a massive bank looks very different because the lack of training data available for them to build those capabilities on. That's something that we focus very much on at Horizon 3. So I ran more pen tests today than big four consulting companies run a year. I ran more pen tests last year than the entire history of computing. And every pen test is an internal pen test around on-prem, cloud, and hybrid infrastructure, is collecting training data telemetry no one else in the world has. And that is an extremely difficult amount of data to collect and build a moat around. And so I think that there is an arms race. I think the arms race is going to be an exploitation research and time to exploit and time to go Kev, like Sissy Kev. That's where you're going to see a lot of the effort. But to build a broad-scale AI cyber weapon is extremely difficult to do because of the lack of infrastructure training data out there.
It's a great point. I think, let me ask it to you this way. I'm a skeptical CISO. One of your guys shows up, tells me the pitch. I say, gosh, that sounds great. Red teaming, pen testing's been around forever. Tell me what's fundamentally different, because I love Bob on my pen testing company. He takes me out for dinner, buys me steak. We have a great relationship. What's fundamentally different? Why would I leave that and go with you?
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations, you actually have a pen tester. Not everyone has one, especially in the mid-enterprise, mid-market. They don't have anything. It's an IT admin with a couple of security people just wanting to go over.
You don't think most companies are doing pen testing?
I don't think they have pen testers. I think they are paying consultants to show up once a year, but most companies don't have an internal red team, which is why the bulk of my users aren't even security people. They're IT admins and network engineers that just want to fix stuff that matters. And all they want to do is make sure that if they're being asked to stay home or stay and work late and patch a bunch of servers and skip their kid's basketball game, it's because if they don't, they're going to get exploited for sure, and the consequence is complete domain compromise. So when you think about companies that started in the space that struggled, one, there was like a legacy approach to writing and hard coding run books that just didn't scale. But the other part is they try to build tools for pen testers. That's not the market. There's only 25,000 pen testers globally. There's only 5,000 in the United States. Like that's a very small addressable market. How many fixers are there out there struggling to prioritize that want to be able to just fix stuff that actually matters, prove that their tools are working properly, make sure CrowdStrike's configured right? If you're building a pen testing or red teaming platform for the blue team to run self-service pen tests, fix stuff that matters, and then get the aha moment of, I fixed a problem, proved to my boss I did a good job, and then tell all your friends, you've got the starting point of something pretty amazing.
Do I still need a pen test team with your product?
I think the role of the human pen tester focuses on long-tail product security and long-tail OT security. I think infrastructure pen testing at scale is a graph reasoning problem best solved by algorithms. I think long-tail bespoke, like logic flaws in your custom apps, or trying to figure out how to break Optimus as a robot at Tesla, or the long-tail nuclear reactor type infrastructure that Dragos does, is uniquely human because there's no training data. There are no cyber ranges. Like, I would love to raise a bunch of money and go buy a nuclear facility. I can't do that. So how am I going to be able to build algorithms that safely attack nuclear facilities in production? Can't be done. And so I think the human focuses on the long-tail bespoke stuff that puts them on stage at DEF CON, doing network reconnaissance, dancing on domain controllers, compromising credentials. That's stuff that machines are just far superior at solving.
Snail, I remember meeting you a few years ago and you were talking about how lean your company was internally and what you were building differently with AI, and like now AI's come a long way. What does that look like today for you at Horizon 3?
Yeah, so penetration testing is actually similar to chess structurally. So in chess, you've got well-defined opening moves. You're going to move your pawns to the middle of the board. You're going to use your knights to maximize maneuverability. And then the end of the game, you're going to use your rooks to roll up the king. Like, you've got well-defined opens, you've got well-defined closes, but the middle of the chess game is completely dynamic. The same thing happens in pen testing. So what are your opening moves? Network reconnaissance and discovery. You're going to fingerprint every host, port, and service. You're going to find ways to compromise credentials. You're going to find really interesting services like Dell iDRAC or HP ILO or Veeam Backup Recovery, things that are attractive to attackers. And what are you going to do at the end of the game? You're going to find ways to steal data, compromise your domain, pop a host. But the middle is totally open because the adversary has, or the environment has a vote. And so we have to balance is, when are you going to be deterministic in the opening and the closing? When are you going to be creative? And how do you use the right technique for the task depending on where you're at in the middle of that chess game? Does that make sense?
All right, I got a two-part question. So going back to the pen testing analogies that you had, what are the pen tests you guys support, and do you specialize in any, right, web app versus on network?
Yeah,
evil?
so we focused initially on infrastructure pen testing at scale. So everything below custom code. Think of your network infrastructure, identity, access infrastructure, data environments, on-prem, in the cloud, and how they're federated together. And the reason why we started there was twofold. Number one, that is the bulk of the attack surface. Rarely are attackers finding 0 days in your custom code because the effort they have to put in to research your code is extreme. So only if a nation state is very specifically targeting you, like SolarWinds, is that going to be the primary way in. Usually, it's a perimeter device, like your Fortinet device or Avanti device or something. And then once they're in, it's living off the land, it's harvesting credentials. So that's where we focused for infrastructure. The other reason we focused there is that is the most valuable training data no one else has. And the strategy of the company was, chapter 1, build the best AI hacker in the world. Chapter 2, which we've now well in the thick of, is use that AI hacker to build the best left of boom proactive security platform. So customers will lead with pen testing, and then they'll use us to take out vulnerability management, risk prioritization, as well as deception and breach prevention. Like, all of those are left of boom activities. The new chapter we're entering is using offense to improve defense. And the analogy I use is, my wife loves it, if I don't take out the garbage, my wife gets mad. If I don't do the dishes, my wife gets mad. I have a very clear cause and effect pair. If I'm the attacker, I am the cause. I've attacked your environment. I know exactly how your EDR has responded, your data DLP solution, your WAF, your PAM. I know exactly how every layer in your SOC stack has reacted and not reacted. I can then use that cause and effect pair to help you precisely improve the EDR, help you improve your firewall configurations, help improve where to deploy deception and so on. And I think that's what's really important in this new era where in 77 seconds, I can hack an environment. If you can't stop me in 76 seconds, it's game over. Step 1, improve your security effectiveness and make sure all the tools you have are working. Step 2, work to accelerate the decision-making process to detect and stifle and contain an attack. Step 3, set the conditions from a workflow and analyst standpoint to push as much level 1 SOC analyst to robot decision-making, have your humans focus on the hardest problems in the stack. and build muscle memory to get faster and faster in responding to a breach. And that's what we enable, using offense as the driver for all of that.
And just real quick, you said that, pen test right now, AI is not going to go after nuclear weapons and all these other things. Do you think that's going to be true in the future?
I think that training data and access to cyber ranges are the limiting factor to hacking large-scale OT environments, large-scale long-tail environments. If a nation state wants to do that, like there's a book, Countdown to Zero Day, they talk about the Aurora experiments, where for the first time a cyber weapon was developed. This is like the development of Stuxnet. And a cyber weapon was used to get a particular turbine to blow up. That takes national level resources to go figure out. And so, yeah, will the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians commit the resources necessary to build cyber weapons to go after that sector? Sure. Will they hand that to proxies to go off and utilize? Sure. But is that something that's wide scale adopted by threat actors? No. The barrier to entry to get there is quite consequential.
Snehal and Tanya, we got to leave it there. Give it up for Snehal.
I have so many more questions.
That was great.
That
Way
was
to go.
great.
All right, please give a warm welcome to our next presenter, Sandbox AQ GM of Cyber, Mark Manzano, to the stage. What's up, brother? Nice to see you.
Thanks.
How you doing? Okay, so let's talk about quantum computing. It still feels like a lot of science fiction to people. Make it real, make it make sense. What is the actual threat, and what are you doing about it?
So the threat is that a quantum computer ever gets built and breaks into our communication systems nowadays. That's a little bit sci-fi. We don't really know if that will happen. The real threat actually is ignoring that and living an unmanaged and really old way of managing cryptography nowadays. That was our original idea when we spun out from Google 4 years ago, where we set up ourselves to build the first fully comprehensive platform for modern cryptography management, from continuous discovery of cryptography to highlighting what are the vulnerabilities, risks, linking it to business context so that stakeholders could actually get like real value from like where cryptography exists and what should they do about it. And then providing the necessary tools to automatically remediate certain workflows. We worked on that for a few years. We learned a lot about the industry, and we also had to do a lot of educational work to basically say that this is not really about the quantum threat. Like the bigger picture problem here is cryptography has been deployed everywhere. It's extremely fundamental for cybersecurity, and there was no product tackling providing the necessary tool to seamlessly work with this layer. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Judges, over to you. Steve, we'll kick things off at the end.
Awesome. I think my first question is, when's the quantum computer going to get here? Like we hear lots of ranges, but
Yeah.
your position and studying this problem, what is your
yeah, we don't really know. Like there are like studies that every year come out, and it's always like in the range of like from 10 years to like 30, 50 years, right? Like the reality is that we don't really know if it will ever happen. But what we do know is that there are going to be certain things that we anyway have to do. Like we need to migrate to a given set of new cryptographic algorithms. That's mandatory. These are the new standards defined by NIST and like a lot of other regulatory bodies. And that needs to happen regardless of the quantum computer, right? So
You're not going to give me a year?
no. I'm not going to make any predictions.
All right.
What do you compete with today? If I'm acquiring the product,
Yeah.
am I thinking in my mind, oh, he's augmenting my SIM, he's replacing my, like, which fabric of security are you either complementing or replacing?
Most of our customers end up providing more information to their CM, to their SOC. They take all our results and then they basically fuse them into their SOC so that they have an additional dashboard to know something they actually never knew about before, which is shadow cryptography. Like who is using cryptography? What's the life cycle of every single cryptographic asset that I have? Who is actually communicating without providing any security guarantees, or who's using an old version of TLS to kind of establish connections, right? Like there are a lot of blind spots nowadays on that And we've been able to be very, very helpful on like shedding light on some really important questions there to improve the posture.
I would think one of the challenges would be many people would think they would understand the problem, but they wouldn't think they have the problem.
That's right.
How do you demonstrate? Like, if you came in to see me, I'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm not sure we have that problem.
Yeah.
Do you have to do a POC every time to validate it?
Yeah, so we have built a product to provide value very, very fast. Like you can actually find certain interesting things within like literally like a few minutes from logging into the product. You don't even have to deploy like our sensors into your infrastructure, which is great if you do because you get more information. But we're able to just like ingest data that you already have collected through like other cybersecurity tools or by integrating with your cloud as an AI with an IAM role to get that sort of data really fast. And we give you the findings right away in real time. It's a real time kind of inventory kind of thing. So as soon as you log in and you plug in the first ingestion, you start getting value from that. And then once you get real value, within minutes, you can actually decide if this is something that can help you or not. So.
Who's like I have a couple questions embedded into one, but like who's the persona to which you sell to within a company and what kind of companies are your customer? Maybe a couple like use cases or success cases, like that would be interesting just to better understand what you guys are building.
Yeah, so we've been mainly working with CISO teams. We started at the beginning, we started mainly with really large banks. They are the entities that were like ready first to kind of be able to modernize their cryptographic stack. At the very beginning, those banks, their internal programs were called quantum readiness, like that's a link to that. But nowadays, like fast forwarding 4 or 5 years since we've been working with them, their internal programs have changed. Right now, it's about modernizing cryptographic governance, and like actually they have understood that this is a much larger, bigger picture thing that they anyway have to enroll into. And then also government. Like we started working very closely with the U.S. government. That was actually one of the main reasons why we also spun out from Alphabet to be able to kind of be more free on that side. And both government and large banks have been our main partners on this topic. Yeah.
What's the average sale? What's the average ASP for a deal?
It depends. It depends on the size of the entity, but it can go from like the tens of thousands to potentially like several millions. It depends on like the size of the organization and how deep we eventually go on the amount of data sources and how many things we eventually remediate automatically, right? Like the end goal is not to provide more problems to the end user. Like I want the end user to go to the tool and be able to just like monitor the audit log, knowing what are the things that have been fixed automatically.
To your point, I see it as almost like a service that you could provide. Are service providers or MSPs using it using your product as a value add to their customers?
Yes, like a lot of our channel partners actually are engaged into transformation projects with really large entities. And then they use our tool in order to make like the first assessment in order to tell them, actually, you have all of these problems. This is actually one tool that you can use to fix this, but we definitely are helpful on that side.
And what's the time to value? Once you deploy, like how quickly are you putting actionable insights into the potential buyer's hands?
A few minutes, like literally, it's a SaaS product, and as soon as we provide you your instance, like ideally, depending on the entity, we provide like a single instance per customer to make sure that like there are like much more stronger security boundaries there. From the moment that you log in and you provide the initial integration with your first ingestion, it's minutes, and then it's real time, and then we keep kind of monitoring. And the more data you add, the more value you get, because we're kind of cross-reference and we're able to detect like where have we found certain things and from which kind of sensor, and then we cross-reference all this information and deduplicate so that you have like right on point information. So.
Outside of your work at Google, how did you and your co-founders get interested into this like intersection of crypto, AI, and cyber?
Well, I've been working in cryptography my entire career since I finished my PhD, and one of the big problems that we realized when we built Sandbox EQ, which is a company that works at the intersection of AI and quantum technologies, was that on the cybersecurity front, there was like no easy tool, no easy way for the rest of the world to migrate to this new set of cryptographic algorithms that we all need to migrate because of the potential quantum threat. So what we decided, instead of just helping everyone migrate, we decided to build a platform that will definitely seamlessly help migrating to these algorithms, but at the same time, it will set the new standard for how certain things have to be done on the cryptographic layer. So, yeah.
What's the big focus for this year? Is it more funds? Is it go-to-market, technology?
We're definitely growing the business rapidly. The market has matured in the last 5 years for the appetite for kind of getting cryptographic management tools has grown substantially. But at the same time, we're applying all of these learnings that we got along the way on the cryptographic side to AI security as well. We believe that because we understand very well the trust layer that's focused on cryptography, we are extremely well positioned to provide a unique perimeter of trust around agentic AI security. And that's kind of our most recent product offering that we launched a few months ago.
How big's the company now?
Company is about 300 employees totally. In my team, we're probably less than 100. So,
Wow.
yeah.
If quantum reaches kind of the scale that researchers think that it's going to reach, what part of cybersecurity infra do you think is going to just go away or become obsolete?
That's an interesting question. Well, definitely cryptography, if everyone has migrated to quantum-safe cryptographic algorithms, there will be a part of digital infrastructure will be safe, we will be good to go. There are still a lot of things for which we really don't have a solution yet. There are a lot of cryptographic primitives that still rely on mathematical problems that are vulnerable to a quantum computer aided attack, and there still needs to be done a lot of research and then the right standardization problems. But there are a lot of really interesting things that we use every day that are still not safe in a quantum threat situation. For instance, this kind of anonymous way of checking if your passwords have been leaked that some browsers allow you to do. That cryptographic primitive, it's not quantum safe, right? There are a lot of things that still need to be done that are still to be built. Yeah.
Google's obviously a very big company. What do you find is the biggest difference doing a startup than where you were at a massive Google?
Well, I think that you have much more wiggle room to build things from scratch without having to inherit decisions that someone else has taken in the past and make it much more focused and directed to the problem you want to solve. So eventually, the consequence is that it allows you to go faster and grow faster. So that's definitely one of the things that we have been very happy about.
Are you finding hiring challenging? I know a lot of money and people are moving to the AI world. Do you guys find it hard to hire?
I think I think it's challenging for everyone, but we have a unique policy of work where you thrive. Especially my team, we don't have to be in an office because we can work remotely. So we've been hiring wherever people live, and that has allowed us to hire really extremely good talent in both North America and Europe. I'm based in Europe, so.
I think someone's at the door.
You got that in man. We're out of time. He came, he quantumed, he conquered. Give it up for Mark Manzano, everyone. Thank you. Very well done.
So interesting.
I wouldn't think. We used to live in simpler times back when a human was just a human. Now we've got good bots, we've got bad bots, we've got AI agents everywhere. So who better to help us sort it out than the CEO of Human? Please welcome to the stage, Stu Solomon. See you.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Killer jacket. Oh,
Right on.
off green jacket. Oh, nice.
Glad to
I
play
like
it up.
that. Thanks to have you here.
Thank you. The key is not to get the gong before I talk, maybe after.
Yeah, it happens. Well, it's surprised they haven't played me off stage just yet. So good bots, bad bots. We've got lots of AI agents. Talk to me about what you make of it and a bit of an introduction to your work at Human for anyone a bit unfamiliar, Stu.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for the opportunity to chat, and welcome to everybody. Thank you. So look, when we think about bot-based activity, you immediately or historically have always contemplated this basic notion that bot equals bad and human equals good. Human as a company was created to find that unique intersection between all of the digital advertising content on the internet in any kind of environment, whether it's on a website, in a connected device, inside of a gaming environment, to be able to call out fraudulent activity at speed and at scale perpetuated by machine-based activities or bots. Well, over time, it became pretty clear that the scenario that would lead to a scaled fraudulent set of activities driven by machines suddenly no longer became a binary decision. And now we had to start to think about that there are good bots, there are bad bots, there are good humans, there are bad humans, there's bad intent, there's good intent. Now fast forward just a little bit further into this new agentic world that we're starting to live in, and suddenly we realize that the internet is at a unique inflection point where there's more machine-based traffic on the internet than there are humans on the internet. So what are you going to do with it? And how do you decide where and how to allow and enable interactions to occur? Now, you can start to think about this through the lens of a potential cybersecurity kind of mindset, but the reality has become very different. That reality is now predicated on this very basic notion that this is what a consumer does when they go out into the world to shop, to interact with their digital environment, to be able to create e-commerce. So linking together advertising information all the way to a transactional behavior at the end now necessitates giving a layer of trust and issuing that trust to a machine or a human that may or may not have a true identity on the other side of it. And that's what human does at scale and at speed.
All right, it's great to have you here. Judges, over to you. Roberts, take it away.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, what did Jensen say a couple of weeks ago? The average human is going to have 8,000 agents in an enterprise. So certainly a proliferation of the problem. I'm just more curious, completely off technical. What's the URL? Human.com?
It's called human security.
Oh, human security.
Which is a little bit
How did you
confusing.
get human? Like that's amazing.
Pretty amazing and very self-explanatory as to what we do.
And is it fundamentally today a fraud protection product, or is it a security product?
So that's the unique scenario. So what it ultimately is the pure and unique intersection between all the different interactions that you have in your digital environment. We sell our product into advertising space. We sell our product into security components. But what we're finding over time, and I should say, we're about a 10-year-old company, large-scaled. We see, give or take, 20 trillion digital interactions every single week. We are relatively ubiquitous. If you interface with digital ad content, you interface with us. If you do e-commerce and log in to a portal to be able to transact, you're usually going through us in some form or fashion. But what we found is that it's no longer this idea of there's two different sides of the world. The convergence between the CISO, a chief marketing officer, and somebody responsible for digital in e-commerce are now blending in this new world, and we sell right into the middle of that.
Do people use your product to validate ad rates?
So ultimately, there's a whole component of the world that specifically plugs into that. We determine what's called invalid traffic. Invalid traffic could manipulate the artificial economy around the placement and value of ads. It could also create an experience that's either good or bad for somebody who needs brand affinity to attract them to a website, to go shopping and do something.
How did you guys, you said you built this 10 years ago. How did you and your co-founders come up with the idea? What are your backgrounds?
With what, I'm sorry?
What are your backgrounds? You and your co-founders, like, how did you guys come up with this idea 10 years ago? And what?
So I am not one of the co-founders, so I'm just lucky enough to build on top of the legacy of a number of brilliant individuals. But it all predicated on this very basic notion of how do you identify and call out fraud at various stages of a client journey through that kind of scenario. So imagine a scenario that starts with being attracted to an ad. When you get attracted to an ad, you now make a decision to potentially click on that ad. If you click on that ad, you may be a machine or you may be a human. Are you the right one or the wrong one, doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or in a trusted way or not? Ultimately taking you to an application layer, call it a website, to go do something, you authenticate. After the authentication, you have some kind of entitlement or responsibilities and authorities, and now you go and you transact. What they started out by doing was just looking for all the different decision logic that could occur at speed and scale to figure out what machines are manipulating the scenario versus humans. And that's how it all started, was right at that very beginning of the journey.
So just really quick, building on Robert's question, are you guys selling to CISOs or CTOs, or like who's your buyer?
All of the above. So we have about 450 clients and growing, and those clients span almost 50-50 between people that would buy from an advertising protections perspective, as well as those that would buy from let's call it an infrastructure or a security perspective. And how do you guys uniquely distinguish between the humans and the bots, especially the sophisticated ones? And then what delineates you guys from like a generic bot mitigation? Yeah, and that's a perfectly nuanced question because of the sophistication level. Obviously, bots occur at a massive rate, and sophisticated bots are specifically detection aware and are certainly a dynamic adversary, as you would expect. So what we do is it's a triangulation of a number of different things. It's the triangulation of the infrastructure that a connection could be made on. It's all the telemetry that you would expect associated with that infrastructure and traversing the internet, alongside of credentials, both machine-based credential as well as real identity, but also throwing in things like a device identity and the patterns of activity associated with making those connections. And then the final part of the triangulation are behavioral aspects. Humans behave differently than machines behave. Even the machines that are programmed to look and emulate human-based behaviors still have anomalous scenarios. So the triangulation of infrastructure, behaviors, and credentials all come together to make these kinds of decisions in the models.
And how has AI changed that? Has it made it more difficult for you guys?
Yeah, so I look at AI. So AI specifically changes things in a couple of ways. One, it just simply breaks down this basic notion of security in this particular realm, that there's a human on the other side of the computer screen. That's just simply not the case anymore. So the first place where AI starts to manipulate things is, number one, there's a massive proliferation of traffic that's at least ostensibly starting to do things like scrape websites to be able to gather information to train models, but much more now targeted scraping to be able to go out and answer specific questions point in time. When you take those two things together, and you now start to see different behaviors and intent for machine-based activity. You go a step further, and a subset of that is agentic traffic. For purposes of this conversation, I would define it as ability to act with authority and autonomy with some element of self-learning over time. And now you start to say, okay, what are those guys out there trying to do? What they're doing is emulating the same behavior as any customer shopping on the internet. They're going to go ahead and navigate to a site. They're going to get information about a product. They're going to make decisions around pricing. They're going to ultimately navigate across that website and then theoretically transact if they've given the authority to do so. It's the same exact scenario as a human behavior would be, so it's no longer a binary decision to be able to allow it or not. And that's where we come in to help establish that A, visibility, and then B, trust. But it's the behaviors that you would expect as a human to simply enable it through technology.
It's such an interesting point, isn't it? Because if I'm a human and I've got my AI agents doing the work for me, am I a bot? Am I an agent, or am I a human at that point? And how do I discern that?
That's right.
And I can see the security element. I'm thinking of it more from an advertising perspective, because one of the big challenges now for ad rates, as you know, is people have all these bot farms that are driving up ad rates. And so how do I validate from a real bot or real viewer online to something that's not?
That's right. And I would argue it doesn't actually matter anymore. Because what is the ultimate?
And you would say that because in some cases the bot is acting like a human, so the effect is the same.
The effect is the same, but it creates a natural forcing function driven by technology instead of by economic interest to effectively do what a marketer or an advertiser wants to do, which is build awareness, build brand affinity, and create a transaction at the end, convert a lead. And so what this ends up being, it takes that basic notion that makes an ad great, and it takes the basic notion of what makes security good, which is add friction in the right places and reduce friction in the wrong places to be able to create a good outcome. Suddenly, whether you're a CISO or you're an ad professional, you have the same desired outcome in an e-commerce journey.
Can you provide a signal? Because you're monitoring all the bots, can you actually provide me a signal on what's popular, of what's trending?
Yes. So certainly that's a byproduct of that. I would look at it instead of the signal from just an advertising perspective, which is I think where you're probably going with that question. What that really helps you to understand is how a particular set of activities leads to a transactional outcome that won't be fraudulent, that won't have a chargeback, that won't have a canceled interaction. And so suddenly it makes the economy go round, not just the advertising component.
Like attackers or bot creators are also using AI, and obviously the defenders are. Are we like on an arms race on the bot creators versus the bot defenders?
It's a perpetual arms race, and no doubt about it. I heard Kevin Mandia talking about this yesterday as well, and he was kind of looking at that balance and saying, you know, we obviously have a race against time between defenders and attackers. Attackers theoretically in a bot-based world have a little bit more of an advantage because they can iterate faster. I would argue that what this really boils down to, though, is lower barriers to entry, almost a democratization of the ability to attack. So now somebody with nascent skill and nascent capability can create an outsized impact, and that's the real hurdle that we have to be ready for.
How big's the company today, Stu?
So company is about 400 individuals around the globe. We are quickly approaching 150 million in annual recurring revenue already. And as I said earlier, thank you. And as I said earlier, we're touching a few trillion, about 20 trillion digital interactions a week. And I think the other part that's interesting is that this isn't just a notional concept. We have nearly 200 clients actively using this agentic trust capability that I mentioned.
All right. Well,
Just made it.
you've made it. I went over.
Right on.
Somewhere out there, a bot is very upset. Give it up for Stu Solomon. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I lost my pillow.
And now we got to, wow, we're getting through this.
Ran away.
All right. And now our next guest is going to help me figure out how this image of me ended up on the internet. Oh, my God, it's so much bigger on the screen. Like I didn't need all that. All right. Please welcome to the stage the founder and CEO of Blackbird AI, Wasim Khaled. What happened with that? It's nice to see you, judges. I'd like to apologize, by the way, for that.
What did I miss?
The rest of you, though, you're welcome. It's nice to have you here. Thank you for being here. Narrative intelligence, it's a pretty big concept, a little wonky maybe for a lot of people. Help us better understand, first of all, what it means and what you are doing actively to protect against those types of attacks.
All right. So, I think it's always important to start with the why. So we started Blackbird because we felt disinformation and misinformation was going to be the existential problem of our time. And we built a platform for narrative intelligence to essentially address that. So narrative intelligence, as we define it, is the ability to detect and respond to narrative attacks. Now, narrative attacks are any kind of coordinated attack around the conversation and around incidents to distort perception, manipulate what people think about the incident that actually occurred, to create pressure within the C-suite from the general public, and to essentially confuse and remove options. And it reduces your strategic advantage in decision making. Now, the incident itself is always it's kind of two fronts. Think of it as, let's say there's an incursion into a country, a geopolitical event, or it could be a breach, a cyber breach or cyber incident. There's the real incident that occurred, and then there is the manipulated narrative that is driving perception around that event. And Blackbird was designed to detect and understand and respond to the narrative attack. And this is particularly important today because we are locked in geopolitical and geoeconomic confrontation, and adversaries are trying to use companies, organizations, to strike at an entire nation by eroding value. And so narrative attacks have become very important to the C-suite, to CEOs, and more recently to security teams and CISOs. And so we have built this platform to understand everything from adversarial bot networks and essentially manipulating human perception at scale. And that's why Blackbird exists.
All right, Wasim, well, thank you for being here. Judges, over to you. Rinky, we'll kick things off with you.
Can you share just one of the examples of a narrative attack you've seen just with the crisis happening right now in the Middle East?
Yeah, We are in the thick of a lot of different projects on that, so I can't be very specific on it. But I will say that every time there is a geopolitical conflict, we think of it as attributes to a playbook. There is convergence, amplification, and spillover. And what that means is convergence is whenever there is a physical incident occurring, you will see bot networks light up. You will see massive amounts of deepfakes and deepfake imagery designed to create some sort of reaction in the public, to create pressure, to create societal outrage and economic impact. On the side of amplification, it is about using every possible piece of tradecraft. And so from a TTP's perspective, techniques, tactics, procedures, to create massive amounts of confusion around that incident. And then there's spillover. Geopolitical turns into geoeconomic. And so every time there's an event, there are opportunistic threat actors waiting to just pour gas on the fire in the information space. And we are all experiencing it, whether you're a CEO, a member of Congress, we are being shaped. And so that is typically what we see anytime there is any kind of event like this.
When you see one of those narrative attacks forming, how do you guys validate that intelligence and present it to the leaders, the CEOs? And then what do they do with that, right? Like what's the next step once you know about it?
So we are a proprietary framework that works under a framework of narratives, networks, and actors. Those are the lenses that we look at all of these information sources in. So narratives are the developing stories. So this is clustering of all the content, ranking it into the themes. We then look at networks, and that was our kind of claim to fame. We actually started working with the Department of Defense back in 2020 because of this combination of narratives and how they propagate. So think of like the contagion-like spread, the velocity of those narratives. More importantly, the actor groups, who they are actually trying to convince of a particular topic. And so those actor types, we look at thousands of them. They could be state actors, state-affiliated actors, things of that nature. So think about being able to visualize the narrative, where it's spreading in the network, and then the actor types that are converging. And so we now have actually more recently an agentic response system to help them actually address these and triage the alerts, things of that nature. And so it is usually the security teams or the strategic comms teams that are using it on the enterprise side. And then what used to be OSINT teams are now using these systems on the national security side.
Nice. And does it look like takedowns or does it look like counter narratives?
It can be takedowns. Often it's counter narratives. It gives them essentially decision advantage on where to actually look and where to target those counter narratives specifically.
We just had somebody here, I'm going to call it human, talking about differentiating bots from humans. I was going to ask you, do you differentiate between bots and humans? But I guess it's an invalid question because you don't really care. If I'm using a large bot farm to influence opinion or push an agenda, that still feeds into a data point that you want to serve up to me. So you're not trying to differentiate whether it's a bot, whether it's a human. You're just looking at the overall messaging.
No, so the very first thing we look at is messaging. We absolutely look at whether something is bot-like in nature. And we have been fingerprinting these incidents for the last 7 years. And so we have a knowledge graph that essentially any actor or account appears, we can correlate all of their previous activity and be able to understand it's bot-like activity or human conversation. And I will say it's extremely important today, but it's almost about identifying humans in the information ecosystem because there are so many new agentic swarms that are acting as humans and creating those conversations. So the offense has accelerated, and so our defensive measures and detective measures are actually often trying to understand who's human because it's being overrun by agents right now in those spaces.
Why is it called Blackbird? I'm always curious why people name a company that they do. When I started my company, I went long time ago. It was called Herjavec Group, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, you're so vain! You named it after you." And literally at the time, you had to register physically a company. You couldn't do it online. And I'd already sold something, and I needed to get the money from the client. So I went in line, and the lady said, "If you give me a name that's already taken, you have to come back in a week." And I'm like, "Crap. There's no other Herjavec out there." So that's why we named it. But why'd you name it Blackbird?
Blackbird was because I was a hardcore Game of Thrones fan, and it's after the three-eyed raven. So being able to see past, present, future, and overlaying that back. So that's
I said this was like Cyber Game of Thrones. It wasn't-
I'm curious, like, who are your customers? Are they enterprises that are trying to protect from false narratives of themselves, or like how do you think about that? And I actually lived this pain in 2020 during the U.S. election when I was the CISO at Twitter, and so like, is it Twitter-like platforms that are your customer?
So we have a lot of Fortune 500 brands that are thinking about their reputation. You have to take a position on everything now, and so you have to understand like how might that play out. So that's a big focus. Started in national security, so NATO is one of our largest customers. So they selected us for information assessment across their 32 allied nations. I mean, we have a Fortune 5 tech company who uses us for executive protection, CEOs, executives, what kind of problems they may have, when they're going around the world. And some of these companies are the size of nations, so the decisions can create all kinds of different outcomes they may want to avoid. So it is a crisis.
Do you mean on the executive protection side, like avoid situations where they may become part of the narrative or something, or how would it look like?
Think of it as like risk escalation, like the CSO might be the one that's buying this, chief security officer. So it's physical posture protection, elevating risk from say green to red because say the entire industry is under attack for something that happened to one company. So it's the narrative risk to executives that they need to elevate from. So that's.
And how do you show your ROI on that? 'Cause the narrative attacks seem a little fuzzy. Like, how are you proving that to your customers?
I mean, it used to be much harder 5-6 years ago. I mean, today we have third parties that can look at this. So Gartner recently put out a report that said approximately $500 billion in damage from disinformation, malinformation, misinformation over the next 3 years. And they are also saying that over the next 2 years, $30 billion in spend will be allocated towards fighting disinformation on the technology side, mostly coming from cybersecurity and marketing budgets. So even if you cut that in half on the amount of damage to like 250, because I think it's a bit of an overblown number, but 250 is still a lot of damage. And look, we've had a customer that with a single narrative attack, they experienced $20 billion of market cap damage in the course of a week. And they could have gotten way ahead of it if they had gotten to us sooner.
How has agentic AI helped your company the most?
We have gone like since January fully into agentic simulation, wargaming, and response. So if you think about it from, particularly security teams, incident response can be prioritized based on understanding when the narrative is outpacing what you can technically validate. So in the case of, say, malware or ransomware being installed, the public may feel that you do not have a good handle on it, and you may reprioritize how you do IR. We're working with a pretty large cybersecurity firm to prove that out right now, but putting the agentic models into that accelerates that process massively. So we have dozens of agents that could be spinning up what used to take OSINT analysts and response analysts to do. So that's a new product that we're launching in a couple of months, actually.
How'd you get passionate about this space?
What was that?
How did you get passionate about this space?
I would say being a first generation immigrant with parents who left country of origin because of narrative driven violence, that's probably one of the biggest ones. And, I went most of my life without ever thinking about anything like that. And, saw what was happening in the world, and we wanted to do something that could give people the ability to make decisions without being manipulated. No one wants to be manipulated, not companies, not individuals. So that was what kind of inspired us to start the company.
You had mentioned NATO, Department of Defense, Fortune 500 companies. Like, what's your target demographic from companies? Like, should this be like mom and pops looking, or like who's best using it?
They have to be big enough to be a target, right? So, and Fortune 500s, Global 2000s, national security organizations. So I mentioned NATO, but we work with ministries of defense. We work with a number of Fortune 50 companies. Banking is a big one. They're starting to create fusion centers that are integrating comms with threat intelligence. So that's pretty much the core market.
Do you see it as a consumer product one day,
No,
where individuals would want to know what their reputation
they
is?
do, but it's tricky. We focused on that for like 6 weeks at the beginning. There's a lot of nuance to that. Yeah.
What? Oh.
Oh, perfect.
Saved by the bell.
You did start the question. I'll let you finish.
Why not? Why don't you see that as a market?
The ones
Besides the fact that
ones who need to be convinced are not going to use a product like that, and the ones who typically would use something like that, I just think like the monetization of it at scale would be tricky, right?
No,
So-
for sure. But I was just thinking from a consumer perspective, who wouldn't want to know what their online rep? If it was
100%.
easy and low cost, I see a very wide
We
adoption.
have a product for like, if you plug your name in, there's like a reputational analysis. So influencer analytics, person of note, yeah, for yourself, right? But we're not a fact checking kind of true or false thing. It's not about true or false. You can take a true piece of information, recontextualize it, push it through the information space. So it's about understanding that manipulation component for us.
All right, we got to leave it there. Give it up for the three-eyed raven himself, Wasim Khaled. I don't want to cut you out. You started the question. I was like, I got to allow it. It's like,
Wow, it's just like being on Shark Tank. Kevin's always cutting me off.
I'm Mr. Wonderful in this equation.
Well, you have hair, so you're.
Oh, I like that. We like Kevin. All right. Who do we have next? All right, our next speaker is the Chief Strategy Officer, at Clarity, which means he is responsible for protecting the systems that quite literally keep our lights on. No pressure at all. Please welcome to the stage, Grant Geyer. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Grant, judges, Grant. So protecting everything from your toaster to the machines that might one day save your life. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Give us a bit of an introduction to your work at Clarity, Grant, for anyone a bit unfamiliar.
Yeah, so just a little bit on the problem statement. Look, we're all familiar with what happened over the past couple of weeks with the attacks for Iran against Stryker. What people in the room may not be aware of, but literally as we speak, Iranian hackers from the IRGC are actively targeting programmable logic controllers in retail, water and waste, and manufacturing, literally as we speak. And so what we're talking about here, the target they're going after are cyber-physical systems, right? These are assets with one foot in the digital world, one foot in the physical world, such that a cyber compromise can cause sabotage of building automation systems in hospital, production lines, serious stuff. And specifically, so what's different now? You may say, look, this has been around for 10 years. These assets are out there. What's different now is connectivity and convergence. In order to get the benefits of digital transformation, every asset-intensive enterprise is investing in connectivity from these assets to the cloud to get telemetry, which means that the attack surface area is expanding dramatically. And that's where Clarity fits in. Our market is to focus on cyber-physical system protection. What we do is focus with a lot of AI-driven techniques now to get deep asset visibility into the entire cyber-physical system estate. We drive insights through prioritization of assets, so the organizations don't need to fix everything. They can focus on the production lines and the assets that matter most. We work with an ecosystem of partners, the firewall vendors, endpoint vendors, to drive segmentation and protection so that they can remediate risks and focus kind of left on bang to reduce that attack surface area. How do we differentiate? Really kind of three key focus areas. Verticalization. We need to understand the nuanced and contours in the verticals in which we operate. This means that the operational constraints, environmental constraints, risk tolerance are different in a hospital compared to a manufacturing plant, compared to a data center. Second is expertise. We have 10 years of expertise in IoT, IOMT, OT assets, so we know how to not just protect them, but how do you do it safely, right, given the operational and mission critical nature. And third is a platform approach, right? So we started in asset visibility. We've expanded into exposure management, network protection to help drive segmentation through our ecosystem partners, threat detection and secure remote access. And we have opportunities to expand into other adjacent areas like OT backup and recovery, breach attack simulation for OT assets, automated remediation. And so therefore kind of the size of the prize is really enormous here. It's a $46 billion TAM that will only expand as we move into other adjacencies. At present, we have about 1,300 customers, 25% of the Fortune 100, 30% of the healthcare institutions in the United States. And it's a vast TAM. 90% of the customers we go into is bonkers or literally doing nothing in the area of OT security or CPS security. So that's what we're focused on, helping to safeguard critical infrastructure and asset-intensive enterprises. Over to you.
Steve Pugh.
All right. Let me see if I can remember this. So you guys do visibility, threat detection, secure access. When you go into these environments, what's like the hardest technical problem you generally run into? And then what's the number one thing most customers underestimate when they start working with you guys?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that we see is there's a reticence to using active discovery for assets. So what we found is that just because we have such enormous data lake, if you use passive collection techniques, you can only get deep visibility, the visibility you need to understand the vulnerabilities, from about 33% of the assets out there. And that's not, our competitors can only do the same because there are decisions made 10, 20, 30 years ago about what CIs to put inside the protocols. But if you use active querying, or we developed an agent where we can talk the protocols the way the HMIs or engineering workstations were, okay, we've been able to show you get to about 70% deep visibility. So I think that we're dealing with a lot of cultural artifacts that represent, that inhibit organizations to get to the level of visibility they need to drive risk remediation actions.
So, Graham, we used to do, one of my companies, we used to do a lot of work with utilities and pipelines. And this is years ago. I've known Clarity for a long time. And they went through a process of networking a lot of mechanical devices. So they started putting sensors in all these mechanical pipelines, utility systems. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a massive opportunity for us in cyber, because the minute you connect it to a network, it's a vulnerability. And some of that is happened and the market's grown. Obviously, you guys have grown, you guys are bigger. Why isn't it even bigger? Because I thought this was going to be a tidal wave of new vulnerabilities, huge companies, and so on. Why do you think people aren't protecting them at the rate? Because you just said most people you walk into are doing nothing. That just seems so odd to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with the Maritime ISAC, and they were telling me that 99% of the spend for Maritime is actually on the IT systems. And when you look at the risk to vessels at sea, it's just bonkers that they're not investing more in terms of protecting the turbine, the power systems, propulsion systems, all of these different systems that could literally stop a ship at sea. So I think that part of it is awareness. I think part of it is that IT attacks are more present and every day. We conducted a research from our research arm, Team 82, in which we found, by harvesting data on the dark web, we found 200 examples of PLC SCADA system HMIs that were compromised from Iranian-affiliated or Russian-affiliated state actors. So if the tidal wave isn't there yet, it's forming, because the red line continues to move in terms of what our adversaries are willing to do. And there's always an adversary willing to go further than the last one.
I forget if it was in 2024 or 2025, but Dragos bought Network Perception, and then we just saw the $7 billion acquisition of Armis by ServiceNow. What does that mean for Clarity, and where do you see this, the M&A in this space going?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we expanded in 2022 from OT security, from industrial security, into healthcare as well by the acquisition of Medigate, and we're expanding now into public sector, data centers, retail, hospitality. So the white space is enormous in this segment. What I'd say is that we're in, I think, a very positive position because, first of all, the valuations were 15x for Nozomi, 25x for Armis. So in terms of shareholder value creation, there's enormous opportunity. But also there's a degree of freedom that we have now that our traditional competitors don't, because I don't think ServiceNow is going to enable Armis to do an acquisition to move into adjacency. So I view this as an opportunity to build inorganically into adjacent areas to differentiate in ways that our competitors can't.
Do you think we're becoming more vulnerable now, or do you think we've always been and we're just now starting to see it, or at least talk about it more? Because to Robert's point, how are all these people not doing anything today? We talk about cyber stuff all the time.
I think we lived in a world for years of guns, guards, and gates in a lot of these places. And however, this notion of an air gap is a myth, right? I can tell you that one of the largest manufacturers, because we have their data lake, we found over 4,000 remote access connections through all the security controls directly into the plants because somebody just set it up. And so a lot of it is just not unaware, a lack of awareness that these things are there. I do think part of it is with more purposeful convergence and with more purposeful connectivity due to digital transformation, the pathways into these environments are definitely making them more exposed.
And so as these environments get connected, you have traditional cyber teams protecting, and then you have the operational engineers. How do you guys help bridge the gap between those two?
So look, we find that organizations, if they don't come to the table in a deal or an RFP with both IT and OT at the table or cybersecurity and biomed teams at the table, they're doing it wrong, right? The project will fail. And so we try to coach them during the engagement process around making sure they understand the operational constraints, environmental constraints, risk tolerances, so they have to do that right. We also go through training during the onboarding process. Like a lot of these organizations aren't organized. They don't know who's throwing the ball and who's going to catch the ball. So a lot of it goes into helping clarify what the outcomes are that they want to achieve. And a lot of times they're not even aware of what outcomes they want to achieve. So a lot of it's education, alignment, and then ensuring that we can build programs with them to ensure that they get on, I'll say, a steady maturity journey towards a better resilience.
Grant, whether it's mechanical, SCADA, or T, is there an industry from your experience that's currently more vulnerable than another one? Where are you seeing the highest level risk from a mechanical typical system?
Well, look, healthcare are just rife because of big, beautiful bill, university cuts, HIPAA recertification.
Legacy system.
Legacy systems. Healthcare is, we have data that shows higher ransomware attacks against healthcare. So healthcare is definitely one of them. Second is manufacturing, because they have the pockets to pay for it, right? Manufacturing is definitely vulnerable. And third is now data centers, right? We have to look no further than Iran physically targeting AWS data centers in Dubai with 3 missiles to recognize that they are now on kind of the forefront because of military targeting of targets. And I expect them to be more cyber attacks against data centers.
Got a minute left. Judges, anything else?
Curious how sticky your platform is. Once you get it installed, time to value, and then, churn, those sorts of things.
Yeah, time to value is important. As I talked about before, we try to urge organizations, if it meets their requirements, to go down the passive discovery path if they want to.
Yeah.
But it can be a long time to value because they have to, go through change management process. They have to configure boxes. We have to shift boxes around the world. That can be a lengthy process. We recommend that organizations do what we call dynamic discovery, starting with integrations, active queries. With one of the largest data center providers in the world, we rolled out 120 sites in 9 months only using this approach. And we recommend doing passive after for threat detection as kind of secondary. So that's kind of the time to value aspect of it. In terms of stickiness, we have extremely high, 95% GRR rates, 114% NRR rates. So
Wow.
The business metrics demonstrate that once you get in place, it's hard to rip you out.
Is deployment an issue? Like I'm thinking of a typical hospital, so many medical systems, so many legacy systems. How long does it take to typically deploy decent coverage? Because you're never going to get full coverage, but decent coverage.
The deployment, the biggest impediment to deployment is the passive boxes. Once you deploy, getting visibility is lightning quick.
Grant Geyer of Clarity, folks, give it up. Man, I'm so happy I'm not one of the judges. I don't know how you go through and you have to pick out of those 6 awesome contestants who are down here today. Robert, Rinky, Steve, the spotlight is now on to you. You've got a lot of work to do. Before you head off to deliberate, though, any final thoughts or things top of mind from the great pitches you heard today?
Fantastic technology. I love the variety of things and the problem sets that these folks are attacking, and I'm glad to see some really sharp minds going after these problem sets.
Yeah, it's incredible to have these founders on stage and just hearing even some of the pivots that have happened. And I hadn't even heard of a few of these brands that have been around for so long. And so it's incredible hearing from them.
I'm just frustrated none of them asked me to invest in the seed round. Why am I even here?
Yeah, you got a few hands. I see you open floodgates now. Oh, wait a minute. Is he open for pitches today? Warinki, Steve, Robert, it's been great to do this. Give it up one more time here for our judges. You guys are awesome. Hang on one second. I'm gonna wrap. I just want to set the stage here
It
for
says
what we
right
got
there,
coming
stay
up.
on.
Yeah, it does. There you go. All right, one more time for our 6 companies: DataB, Horizon 3, Sandbox AQ, Human, Blackbird AI, and Clarity. Huh? How great were they? They walked out here, they made their case, they took every question from the judge. That's no easy task. Thank you all for being here. I'm JD Durkin. This has been Tomorrow's Titans. Don't head far. We'll see you back. Yeah.